Alright, testing to make sure everything is good to go. I think this is probably going to be a very quick video because I talked at length for almost all of the books that are on this respective list. I am going to be talking about my favorite books of 2024, and it gives me so much joy to be able to talk about these 7 books that I thought were wonderful reads in this respective year. Not necessarily all of them were published this year or this respective year, but I read them in 2024 and I'm so happy to be able to share them. So let's go ahead and get into it. Hi everyone, my name is Rose, also known as TA Summers. Welcome back to my channel. As I mentioned in the intro, this is going to be a list of my favorite 7 books that I read in the year of 2024. And I'm just going to go through them fairly quickly in terms of things. By the time that this video goes up, I think my Bookish Superlatives, Bookish Stats, as well as the Reread, Rewrite, Burn challenge that I did for 2024 will be up. So you will have kind of a heads up in terms of what this video is going to showcase. So we're just going to go ahead and dive in without further ado. So the very first book that I want to mention is my favorite YA novel of 2024, and I wanted to highlight this first. I absolutely love this respectively timely read in YA. It was published last year in terms of things because it feels like 2024 was whirlwind in terms of releases and things that were going on, but this was a very solid offering in YA, chronicling the story of an Indian Muslim girl who fights at her school against the onslaught of book banning and tackles it in just a wonderful way. Of course, I'm talking about This Book Won't Burn by Samira Ahmed. I feel like probably because it meets a moment so acutely that a lot of people haven't talked about it, but I have a full review of it on the channel, but it was a wonderful read. It definitely had me tearing up. It had me wondering if Noor and her sister and her mother were going to be okay after a string of tumultuous events in terms of them moving from a big city to a smaller town and having to cope locally with the rush of book bans at Noor's local high school. So she decides to do something about it by creating a banned book club and trying to interact with members of a community and trying to navigate a romantic triangle in terms of things, and a lot of prejudice in terms of things. It's a wonderfully evocative read, and I enjoyed so much of it in terms of things. I found it very compelling, and I really loved it. That is my first pick for one of my favorite reads of 2024, and also my favorite YA novel of 2024, This Book Won't Burn by Samira Ahmed. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. Loved it. Second book that I want to mention is my favorite fantasy read for 2024, and I would say that this was in the works for quite some time. I started reading it back, I believe, in 2022, and because of certain things, I wasn't able to finish it in full, but then I picked it up again in 2024, and I ended up enjoying so much of it in terms of things. Of course, I'm talking about The Coward by Stephen Aryan, and it was one of the more compelling fantasies that I have read in the past several years in terms of things. Very like dimensional characters, very compelling journey in terms of following Kel, who is the lone survivor amongst his group of heroes in terms of things. He ends up completing the deed, going back to the kingdom, but then trouble brews in the kingdom again, and then he has to be compelled to go on this journey again, and he doesn't want to. He thinks about deserting the task that's ahead of him, but with the aid of the recruits that come with him, as well as the challenges he faces, he ends up making a very compelling journey, and very well written fight scenes, very high stakes. I really enjoyed the overarching narrative of The Coward in terms of things, and I can't wait to read The Warrior in this respective year of 2025. So My favorite fantasy was The Coward by Stephen Aryan. I gave this, I think, 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and definitely worthy on my favorite books list of 2024. Third book in terms of this one was hard because I could have easily chosen between two different books in terms of things, and I decided like I would probably just include both of them on this respective list, so you can might as well say I love these respective adult romances. I gave them glowing reviews, and I've already reviewed them on the channel before, but and if you've watched my channel, you can probably already tell what I'm gonna choose for favorite romance, and I would say like contemporary type romance. First one I want to mention is This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan. That was a wonderful story of Soledad's respective journey in the Skyland series. You're following Soledad as she is put through a lot of tumultuous things in terms of the failing of her respective marriage because of her husband, who is embroiled in a scandal that like basically devastates the family, and Soledad has to pick up the pieces and be able to start anew. And the investigator that is investigating her husband ends up meeting her, and they end up having very pronounced chemistry in terms of things in a relationship that ends up bringing those respective families together. You meet Soledad's family and like trying to put the pieces together for her kids, but you also meet the investigators the kids as well in terms of things, and it deals very realistically with autism as well, and it has twins. So there were a lot of aspects of This Could Be Us that I really enjoyed. So I would say that's definitely among my favorite books of 2024. And for the fourth mention, which is along the same lines of favorite romance, I would say A Love Song for Ricky Wilde by Tia Williams was also one of my favorites for 2024 because of how compelling it is in terms of following the respective relationship between the leading characters and folding into the history of the Harlem Renaissance in terms of the past and present and how that ends up coming together. I'm not going to spoil too much about it because number one, I already talked about it on the channel before, and number two, like I feel like going in without knowing what to expect is probably the best way to be able to enter in this respective novel. And I think it's among Tia Williams' best work in terms of things. I think this is my favorite work from Tia Williams in terms of the three works that I have read from her. And I'll probably give a full review of two of Tia Williams's other works in tandem with kind of a chronicling of like her respective bibliography in terms of things. But I really enjoyed A Love Song for Ricky Wilde, and it was definitely among my favorite books of 2024. Along the same lines of romance in terms of things, technically speaking, but I would also say that this is technically fantasy, sci-fi, romance in terms of things. And if you have seen my earlier video for the channel, I'll probably even talk about this even more in terms of things. But I loved the third book in the Kinsman universe series, Faded Blades by Alona Andrews. This was a wonderful enemies to lovers story in terms of showcasing the story of Ramona and Mateus, whereas they're navigating like their respective betrayals in terms of things, and having to forge a tentative alliance to be able to fight against their respective betrayals in terms of things, and finding out in terms of like being assassins and trying to being a part of this feuding family in terms of things where their loyalties lie. It's wonderfully action-packed. I love the world building of this respective book, as well as the dynamic between the characters. It was very well done, and I definitely enjoyed it in terms of things. It was one of my favorite reads of 2024, and I'm glad to have had the chance to read it. It was also a very short read, considering in terms of things. I flew through it. I enjoyed so much of that, and I thought it was a great companion to the Kinsman universe series. So that is Faded Blades by Ilona Andrews, the third book in the Kinsman Universe series. Next book, which is my sixth favorite book of 2024, is also my favorite horror. It happens to be YA. And I think there were aspects of this that could have been improved upon in terms of the pacing and things, and I talk about it in a review on my channel. I otherwise thought that this was a compelling horror, kind of a slow burn, because it keeps you guessing in terms of like the elements of it, in terms of this very complicated family, very well-to-do Black Canadian family who has to navigate a lot of family history and a lot of drama in terms of things in the measure of Sunny having to navigate her brother's crime and wondering in terms of how he fits into the pieces of things and what family secrets are there. Of course, I'm talking about Tender Beasts by Lizelle Samberry. I thought that this was very well done with a lot of layers to it that I really appreciated for a YA horror. And I think there may be some who may find certain elements of it to be repetitive and a little bit overdrawn. But I think the way that it brings two different narratives together between Sunny's respective dealing with a lot of things in the present, as well as Sunny's mother who had passed away, essentially like talking about her ordeals in the past and how that narrative comes together, is really rewarding, and it definitely like a lot of points where it is very, very creepy. So like definitely check the trigger warnings on this respective work. But I really, really appreciated it, what it chose to do in terms of the overarching narrative, and I gave it a strong 4 stars in terms of things. I think certain things could have been done better, but it still ended up being one of my favorite books of 2024. So I'm glad that I had the opportunity to read it in 2024. Which leaves me with my last pick for one of my favorite reads of 2024. And I would say this is technically a tie since I'm mentioning 2 books. And I think it'll make sense when I say them together. I read a lot of nonfiction books in 2024 in terms of things. And I think there was one that really stood out to me in terms of the impact that it had on me, in terms of the way that it blends personal history with current events, as well as dealing with things like specific to whether it's book banning, whether it's history of the Black community and colonialism and impacts, and also the contemporary issues that are going on in Palestine, Israel. So I think it was a narrative that covered a lot of different bases and really had an impact on me in terms of reading that in 2024. Of course, I am talking about The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I give a very detailed review on the channel in my October wrap up in terms of everything that, all the impact that it had on me in terms of things. So I would definitely say that was one of my favorite reads of 2024, even as hard of a read as it was in terms of things. It was very illuminating, and I got a lot out of it. But I would also say that in conjunction with The Message by Ta-Nehisi Coates, being able to elevate Palestinian writers in terms of things is one key aspect that he talks about in the respective work. And I also found that this respective next book that I'm going to talk to mention, which I'll give a review because of it on the channel later, since it was part of my December reading wrap up, I found Nora Ericott's Justice for Some to be a very compelling read and overarching thorough history in terms of talking about the practices, the different things that were done in the history of Palestine, like in terms of the different relations between different countries, how that came to be, like the dynamic and being able to push for Palestinian rights and statehood. And it was hard to read, but it was very informative in the way that it chose to present this collectively chronological history in terms of the events in Palestine and the different international conversations and happenings that happened in terms of its collective history. So I found that to be a compelling narrative, and I think it makes sense to mention it in conjunction in terms of being with the message, because Ta-Nehisi Coates mentioned that Nora Ericott's work influenced him in terms of like really digging into the history and details of things that were going on during his trip to Palestine and Israel in the 10 days that he chronicles in the message in terms of things. So I thought mentioning the message by Ta-Nehisi Coates as well as Justice for Some by Nora Ericott were among my favorite nonfiction reads of 2024 that I was able to read during the year. So that is a short summation of my favorite reads for the year of 2024. Very quick video in terms of things. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell to be informed of when I post new videos. Thank you again so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next video.